time their kids are getting. Both of my sons played high school football.
And were you that dad that hey coach, stick my boy in there, and were you that guy?
Oh no,
that's right.
My son made it very clear. He said, "Dad, please do not talk to the coach about my playing time, because in practice he's going to take it out on me. He's doing, I'll be running gassers and laps." And so I said, Ryan, I'm not even going to talk to the coach about your playing time. When my son was playing high school basketball, his team won three district championships, and I never ever talked to the coach about his playing time. He earned his playing time in practice.
Well, let me ask you this: were there those parents on any of the teams your kids played on or your son played on throughout the years?
The parents that misbehaved,
that obnoxious pain in the ass dad or mother that knew more about sports than the coach and the athletic director and God Almighty. That guy or that girl.
I saw parents get kicked out of games. I saw parents getting into it with officials on the court. Parents getting into it with other parents, especially parents on the other side that are telling, take that scrub out. He's no good. Say, hey, you're talking to my son. And next thing you know, they're taking it outside.
Sure.
So I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. But fortunately, in this community, there's more good than bad.
Sure. Well, and I know that as a broadcaster, you get exposed to a whole lot of different scenarios, good and bad. And I just wonder, when you look nationwide and you look at, for example, the studies that are out that are talking about the concussion risk to young people and those types of things. What are your thoughts on that, Ryan? You've got a 16-year-old kid that he's a pretty good athlete. He can catch the ball real well. He's doing about a 4.2, 40 and all those types of things. But what are your thoughts on that? Particularly the risks that are now associated with contact sports. And again, we haven't talked about the other sports, but I know the NFL is no different from high school. You got bigger kids, lighter equipment. You've got bigger kids. They're faster. They're hitting people with a lot more velocity. And of course, I know that's the thing when, stick somebody, knock somebody's helmet off, because that's the culture. But what about the risks that are associated with this stuff, Ryan?
Well, we have seen in recent history that the risk is great. We've had former NFL players that have been dealing with CTE and post-concussion syndrome, and I guess parents are starting to think twice about signing their kids up for football. You see a lot more kids playing soccer in El Paso because our close proximity to Mexico.
Sure.
Soccer is very popular in this part of the country, probably more so than football, because that's what they grew up with.
Real football
is a very expensive sport. And El Paso County is economically depressed, to say the least. So it costs a lot of money to play football. You got to invest in cleats and the uniform, and of course everything that goes with football, the all of the pregame and post game and trophies and things of that nature. But yeah, the concussion. Let me just put it to you this way: if I was a parent, I might think twice about putting my kid in football.
Sure, because I'm looking at a study from AAP News, and they're saying that out of the 9,000, just about 9,500 concussions that they analyzed, 64% were during competition, and 36% were during practice. That's a pretty interesting statistic, that you had a pretty decent chance of getting your bell rung in practice, and let alone when you get to the game. And let me ask you this, Ryan, in terms of the high school the high school scene with football. Is there a concussion protocol?
That's a good question. I'm not aware. I'm sure there is. Know that when my son got his bell rung, he was taken out of the game, and he didn't. I don't recall him getting back in the game. So I don't even know if he was diagnosed with concussion. But I'm sure now there are safeguards in place. But I'm not aware of the concussion protocol in the various school districts here in El Paso. But I'm sure there's a protocol in place based on what we've seen at in the college ranks and in the NFL.
Well, if you know this, you may not get into that kind of minutia with these teams, but normally, how many kids would you say are going out for football every year in your region?
Well, let's see. It starts at in the junior high schools. You'll have 2 or 3 middle schools that feed into a particular high school. So I would say maybe between 35 and 40 kids that may go out to may go out for football every year. And you have the freshman squad, then you'll have the JV squad, and then eventually the varsity. So maybe ballpark, maybe 25 to 30 kids trying out for varsity every year.
Okay. And I guess the next question is, and of course we always look forward to hearing from our guy Phil on the East Coast. And as always, Phil has some thought-provoking comments. And when you were talking earlier about studying, Ryan, and the whole academic piece, he was wondering, are there statistics in your area about how many of those kids are pushed through because they can run fast and they can catch fast? And what comes to mind, of course, as you remember from our day when Dexter Manley was pushed through, and he said even in high school he couldn't read, and in college he couldn't read. So when you look at that type of trauma, along with the possibility of physical trauma, are you aware of that kind of information in your area?
I don't have any statistics to show how many kids are basically pushed through or socially promoted because they happen to be athletes. But I'm sure there's a few that get pushed through the system, get quote unquote straight A's because they play football. And but not off the top of my head, I'm not aware of any statistics to show how many kids are being promoted socially because of their athletic prowess.
Now, I know you get the opportunity to see the games up close and personal, and do you find that during a game, if again, Ryan Adams is the best running back on the field, and Ryan happens to get injured, do you find the schools willing to pull Ryan out and pull him out of the game, or pull him out for a quarter, or do they sort of, hey, Ryan, suck it up, get back out there, just based on what you can gauge from the sidelines? Because, often you can see the kids walking around and, trying to jog or getting on the bicycle or whatever so they can, get back out there on the field. Is that the prevailing attitude, or do you find that there is a sense of let's take care of possible medical situation before we're worried about, shooting that ball through the hoop or running that ball to the goal line?
Well, in the games that I've called, my chief, the attitude has always been take the scholar athlete out of the game, sit him down, and try to diagnose. There are some players that come back into the game, and then there are those players that you don't see for the rest of the game. They'll just sit him down, especially if that particular player is a first string player, and they don't want to create any further injury, especially if you've got a big game coming up in a week or two. They may just sit him down, depending on the quality of the opponent. They'll say, you know what, let's just sit him down for the rest of the game. Let's get him well, and then we'll come back later, and we'll come back next week, and he'll be 100%.
So,
but I don't see a whole lot of risk taking with kids' health, and and like I said, there's measures in place. There's an ambulance uh, at every game. There are trainers and other people on both sidelines to make sure the kids are getting taken care of in the unlikely event that they're seriously injured.
And in your travels, do you often or do you at all ever get people coming up to you as a reporter, sort of in an anonymous fashion, saying, you know what, that program down at the Ryan Adams School is insane. I mean, I don't know what the hell they're doing down there, but they're killing those kids. Do you get those kind of reports occasionally?
Not in the short time that I've been broadcasting. No one has ever approached me about any type of wrongdoing or unsavory activity in any of the schools here in El Paso. Mm-hmm. Not to say that it doesn't go on, but no one has brought that to my attention.
So, Ryan, now that the NCAA it appears that they're clearing the way for athletes to profit off of their images and likenesses and those types of things, and we talked about that a couple of shows ago. How do you think that's going to impact this whole thing of pushing my gymnast through, or pushing my track star through, or pushing my football player, son or daughter, even harder, so that they can now get that deal in college if they don't, happen to go straight to the pros?
Well, I think it's only going to make things worse academically, because as long as that financial incentive is hanging out there, they're going to want to get a piece of that. But what they don't realize is that not everyone is going to profit. Let's say, for example, you take a player like the quarterback for Oklahoma. His name escapes me right now. And you have like your superstars, your Heisman Trophy front runners. I mean, they're interior linemen that are not going to get those types of deals. The punter,
right?
The kicker,
exactly.
Those types of deals are for your running backs, your wide receivers, your quarterbacks, those marquee players that are living in the end zone, so to speak. But your interior linemen, not likely. But when you look at the big picture, as we're opening that door to compensation for college athletes, there's going to be that temptation to basically throw caution to the wind and say, you know what, I got to get to college because I got to get to University of Texas because they paying a brother. So it's just going to make things worse, in my opinion. That pressure on kids and parents is just going to be ratcheted up.
And do you think they will continue to make the game safer? For example, when you're looking at the concussion protocols you see in the NFL, do you see those types of things happening down to the high school level? And I guess secondly, do you see the programs getting a facelift, if you will, so that it's almost a realistic situation, as opposed to that kid coming in and thinking, hey, I'm going to be the next O.J. Simpson, or I'm going to be the next, whoever that quarterback is that they like. I'm going to be that's who I'm going to be. I'm going to be the next Ray Lewis. I'm going to be the next, Bart Starr. Because
fortunately, what I've seen, is that the officials at the high school level are starting to mirror those at the collegiate and pro level. For example, helmet-to-helmet contact. They're starting to throw those flags a lot more frequently. Defenseless players getting hit across the middle. Again, those officials are starting to throw those flags more frequently than they would have, say, 5 or 10 years ago, because of what's going on at the pro level. So it's those precautionary measures are starting to trickle down into the high school ranks. So that's a good thing.
Well,
you don't see a lot. Yes.
And that's good to know, because, it appears, at least in some of the instances that I've seen, that, you have a lot